tell you for next month, Connie has lined up that we're going to have a couple of representatives from Think Tank coming, and there will be a drawing. So make sure you all tune in. And I am going to ask everyone if they would mute themselves for the presentation. And please hold questions until the end, and then Mike will answer them for you. So tonight, we are very pleased to have Mike Moats. He is an international award-winning full-time pro macro photographer from Michigan. We have a dog barking somewhere. He is a Tamron image master, Vanguard Pro, and his articles and images have been published in many photo magazines for over 16 years. He has a macro photo club online with over 2,400 members from 27 countries. He does a lot in his free time. Mike teaches workshops and speaks at photo conferences throughout the US. And tonight he is going to present a program on the properly equipped macro photographer. So Mike, take it away for us.
My macro club actually is over 2,600 members now. I got to update that.
Okay.
From 28 countries. All right, so let me get my screen shared here.
Looks good.
That should be it. You see me there?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Gotta get my clicker working here. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to start off with my equipment. I'm going to basically show you a lot of the things that, basic things that you need to know to capture really good macro images. And I'd like to start off with the equipment that I use. Now, there's a photographer named Bill Fortney. He's been in the photo business for well over 40 years. He worked for Nikon for about 10 of those 40 years, and he was a rep. And I ran into him at a photo conference that I was speaking at. And Bill says, he says, Mike, he says, I know you're using our D7000 camera. And he said, it's a good camera, but he says, how come you're not using the professional bodies that we sell? I says, Bill, about 60% of the people that come through my workshops are using cameras that are under $1,000. And I said, if I'm using your $6,500 camera, those people are going to leave my workshop saying, well, Mike's images look really good because he's got a professional, expensive camera, and my camera might be under $1,000, and I'm not going to get images that look as good as Mike. So I have always used cameras that were under $1,000 as far as the bodies go. That D7000, when it was discontinued, sold for $899, and I actually upgraded to the D7500 about a year and a half ago. Not that the D7000 wasn't producing great images, it's just that I wanted an articulating LCD, and that's the only reason I upgraded. But even that 7500 sold for $899. And I just had bought my first mirrorless camera, which is the XT30 Mark II Fuji camera body. And when I contacted Hunt's Photo, I said, I need a mirrorless camera and I want a Fuji because my sponsor, who is Tamron, has an 18-300 lens that'll go on that Fuji camera.
Oh, yeah, fine, good.
And I need it under $1,000. So that camera that they sold me sold for $899. And it's just to show the people in my workshops that you don't have to have an expensive camera to produce top quality professional macro images. Now, I wouldn't tell you that that D7000 camera that I referred to earlier would be a good choice for someone that may be doing action shots or birds in flight. It wouldn't shoot high frames per second. Maybe you're a type of photographer that shoots very, very low light conditions all the time and you need a very high ISO with low noise. My camera wouldn't do that, but we don't require those things for macro photography. So I could take a $500 entry-level DSLR camera and produce images that I'll get published in magazines with no problem. So you don't have to worry about the camera body. Whatever you own will do fine. My lenses are Tamron lenses, and the macro lens that I use is a Tamron 90mm macro lens that sells for $649, but that has been discontinued. Unfortunately, they don't offer it anymore. The 18-400 Tamron lens that I have and the 18-300 that I have run about $649, and the tripod is $220 that I own, and my ball head's $359. So all my equipment together is about $2776. So thousands of dollars less than just that camera body that Bill Fortney was referring to. So, and you could get by for even less money than what I have listed here for good equipment for being a macro photography. Now the macro lenses, they come in different focal lengths. They have them in short, mid-range, and long range. And these are the common ones that I see in my workshops on a regular basis. There are a few in the, in the middle areas of these focal lengths, other macro lenses that are offered, but very rare. I hardly ever see them. These are the ones that are the main ones that you'll see offered. Now in the short focal length, Tamron had a 60 millimeter. Sigma was actually a 50 millimeter. Nikon and Canon had a 60 millimeter as well. Now Tamron is not offering macro lenses anymore. I know that sounds strange, but they don't offer any macro lenses anymore. So if you wanted to get a 60 millimeter, for instance, you'd have to probably get it online somewhere used. In the mid-range, on the low end was the Tamron 90, very popular lens. Many people use that lens. And then the 100 is a Canon, and then the 105 mid-range would be the Sigma and Nikon. And then a telephoto macro lens, the longer range macro lens, a 150 is a Sigma, and then the 180, which was always the most popular of the telephoto macro lens, was that 180 millimeter. Tamron again no longer offers that lens, and I heard Sigma is not selling their 180 anymore. They discontinued. So that would leave Canon. I guess I hope they're still offering that 180. And then the longest of the true macro lenses would be the 200 millimeter macro lens from Nikon. That would be the longest in the telephoto lenses. Now, in the very top right-hand side, you see a small lens, short lens on a camera body. And I'm going to photograph this Rose of Sharon flower. Now, if you know that flower, it's a pretty good size flower. It's pretty big. It's not small. And I want to fill the frame with that flower. And the image in the upper left was shot with that 60 millimeter. Now, in order to capture that full frame shot of that flower, you see I have to get pretty close with that 60 millimeter lens. So those bricks in the background are about 11 inches long. So I'm about a brick away from that flower to get that full frame capture. Now the image below that one, you see a little longer lens on the camera body, and that is a 90 millimeter Tamron. And you can see I'm farther away from that flower now to get the exact same framing like I did with the 60 millimeter. And that's what we call working distance. So I've gained some working distance between me and that subject by adding a longer focal length macro lens. Now in the bottom image, you see a real long lens. That's a 180 macro lens. And you can see I've gained a lot of working distance between me and that flower to get the exact same framing. Now, why is that important? Well, let's say that flower was a live subject like a dragonfly or butterfly. Probably wouldn't be too happy if I'm using a 60-50 millimeter macro lens and I'm 11, 12 inches from its face. But if I'm using a telephoto macro lens, I've got that great amount of working distance. I got a better chance that live subject's going to stay there and not take off. So a lot of the bug photographers tend to use longer focal length lenses so they have that working distance so they don't scare their subjects away. Short range lenses like the 60 millimeter, tough to work with outside because you have to get so close to all your subjects. They're great for tabletop photography, working indoors, studio work, things like that. They work great for that, but outdoors they're a little bit rough to work with. Now, the majority of the people, I would say 80%, at least 80% of the people that come through my workshops are using the lenses that are in the mid-range. So they're at the 90, the 100, the 105. And the reason why most of those people end up in that mid-range is because of the price. Now, when you get into a telephoto lens, you're getting up in there, $1,500 for some of them. And that Nikon 200 may be more than that now. So they're expensive. And so most people end up in the mid-range because you can get yourself, at a time when they were selling the 90 millimeter, you could get it for $649, and you could get the Tamrons, the Sigmas and the Nikon and Canon, maybe a little bit more. So they were in a little better price range that most people were willing to spend. And so that's why most people end up in the 90, the 100, the 105, which they do work fine. And that's what I use as the 90 millimeter. Now they came out with these zoom lenses a few years back that had what they called them kind of macro capabilities. Now, they didn't do true one-to-one macro like a true macro lens does, but they did get you in pretty darn close in your subjects. Now, if you remember back in the old days, you had a zoom lens, you might have a 6 feet minimum focusing distance on those zoom lenses. But now, I mean, you can get in super close with these zoom lenses and get into really small areas with them. And that's the new thing that's been happening in the last, I don't know, 5-6 years or so with the zoom lenses from all the different companies. Now, the one I'm using currently for my DSLR would be the 18-400. For my mirrorless Fuji, it would be the 18-300. So those are the two zoom lenses that I have from Tamron. Now, what I like about these zoom lenses is that if I wanted to show you an image of me out in the field, like here shooting in a swamp, leaves floating on the water, I can always take that 18-400, pop it on another camera body on another tripod and photograph myself out there. So I have 18 millimeters to show a wide angle. And then if I'm in a swampy area there with some duckweed and frogs peeking out, I've got 400 millimeters that I can reach out a good distance away and capture these frogs popping their heads out. Or it's also really nice when you're in botanical gardens and you have to stay on a pathway and there may be a subject that's 3-4 feet in, and you can zoom in on that with the 400 millimeters. So that's a really, really nice ability to have, to be able to do a wide angle and then go to a telephoto and 400 millimeters and reach out and capture subjects at a distance. Now, this 18-400 is designed for a crop sensor body, which is what I've always owned, is crop sensor bodies. If you were to get into a full frame, then you would go with a 28-300 Tamron or whatever brand lens you would use. Now, the nice thing about this 18-400 is you can get into a pretty small area with this lens. So I actually photographed this with that 18-400, and I can shoot as small as 1.5 inches by 2.5 inches. That's a pretty small area. I would say that 90% of the images that you'll find on my website are of subjects that are larger than 1.5 inches by 2.5 inches. So I can basically almost leave my macro lens at home and just bring my 18-400 with me, and it'll do everything I need it to do. If I needed to get into a smaller area, like inside this pocket watch, which is, obviously smaller than 1.5 inches by 2.5 inches, I can always pull out my Tamron 90 millimeter macro lens, and that'll get me into really small areas. Okay. Again, that 18-400 is really good for close-up photography, but to get into that 1-to-1 range with the macro, you need to get into a macro lens. Now, the tripod I use is the Vanguard 3+263. VEO 3+260, that is. And what's really, really nice about this tripod is that it has a center post that rises straight up, and then it goes into a horizontal position. So as you see here, my center post is in that horizontal position, and it allows me to get out over top of subjects. Now, with macro photography, we are always moving our camera into all kinds of places, and many times we want to get out over top of things and get parallel with things. And so that tripod has that ability to move my camera into places where a standard tripod wouldn't go. It also, allows me to move that camera away from the tripod and get that tripod out of the way. And then if you take the legs out, so they'll go straight out, you can literally put the base of the tripod right on the ground, and with the center post extended out, you can put that camera any place you need to go, as low as you need to go. So that is an excellent, excellent tripod. It also has a leg that will unscrew from the tripod, and then you can put your head on that and turn it into a monopod. So really nice feature, the VEO series that they came out with over the past, which was the Ultra Pro series. And again, having that ability to unscrew one of the legs and turn it into a monopod, because there are times when you might go to a botanical garden and they'll say, well, we don't allow tripods in our gardens. And you can always just unscrew one of the legs, and they're pretty cool about letting you come in with a monopod. Now, that tripod runs about $220, I believe it is, but it's an excellent tripod. Now, most of you probably own a ball head of some sort. Now, a ball head has a big heavy metal housing, and at the top you have the little ball, and then at the front of your ball head you'll have a little U slot. So you'll see right here, right there's the little U slot. Now that's where macro photographers tend to move your camera down into so that you can shoot down towards the ground. Landscape wildlife photographers typically wouldn't use that because they're shooting straight ahead at their subjects. But with macro, you may be shooting towards the ground a lot. So you'll be maneuvering your camera into that little U slot. And then maybe you have to pivot the ball head back and forth to get it in your camera into position. So a little bit of an inconvenience because we have to work within a U slot and then maybe pivot the ball head. Now, the ball head that I use is made by Acratech, A-C-R-A-T-E-C-H, and it is called the Ultimate Ball Head. Now, as you can see on this ball head, they have cut away all that big, heavy metal housing that you saw on the last one. So this is a super lightweight head. It's also made out of aluminum, which also helps it, stay lightweight. And the key to the head is the area in the front here, which is cut away, this cutaway section right here that allows you to maneuver your camera into any position you need to go to do your macro photography or any type of photography, but really good for macro because again, I don't have to work in a U slot now. I have free range of movement all through the front of that ball head. So this is an excellent ball head for the macro photographer, but can be used for any type of photography, of course. So this head is a little pricey. It runs about $359, I think it is now. So it is a little on the higher end for some people. But there are heads that are a lot more expensive. This Really Right Stuff and Kirk and I forget what there's another brand I forget about. Anyways, you can find them up much more expensive than $359. But for someone that does a lot of macro photography like myself, that's makes my life so much easier with that head. And then that on top of that Vanguard tripod makes the best setup I found for macro photography. I don't have time tonight to talk about all the different accessories that you can carry because there's a lot of different little accessories we carry as macro photographers, but we want to make sure we carry the diffuser, which is the most important of all accessories. Even if you leave all your other accessories at home, you'll be okay, but you got to have a diffuser when you go out to shoot. Now, this is a Dame's rocket flower. They grow on the edges of dirt roads and edge of fields and stuff, and they're very common here in Michigan. And they are a purple colored flower, but as you can see this image here, the petals on the top portion look more of a pinkish color. Now, some might say, well, maybe this is shot on a sunny day because sometimes the harsh sunlight will wash out colors, which it does sometimes. But this was actually shot on a cloudy day. So even on cloudy days, we can have enough intensity of the light and the reflection of the clouds overhead coming down and can wash out colors on subjects if they are running parallel to the sky. So what we need to do is get a diffuser, which I always carry the 12-inch diffuser. And I like it because it actually collapses into itself down to about 4 inches, around 4-inch circle, and I can fit it into my pocket. And so we take this diffuser out and we put it directly over top of that Dame's rocket flower you just saw, and you get the color of the natural purple it's supposed to be. So again, image on the left side, no diffuser, image on the right with the diffuser. It's almost like a magic trick when you see it happen, going from washed out colors to full color by just placing that diffuser over top of the flowers. So if you look back at some of your macro images and you see washed out colors, that's basically what's happening. You just needed a diffuser to take care of that. Now, on that same cloudy day, I was walking down a trail and I happened to see this leaf, and I see the top portion of the leaf has lost its color, right? Now, that top portion, as I said earlier, running parallel to the sky, that's where you get that washed out look. The section on the front of the leaf, as you see how it dipped 90 degrees towards the ground, that retains its color, all right? It's not parallel to the sky, it's 90 degrees to the sky, so it retains its color, but it's the top portion that has lost its color. So once I put the diffuser over top of it, I can bring the color back. Now the color is a little bit lighter on the top than it is on the front, but there's plenty enough color there that I can darken that top section down to match up with the front of the leaf. So image on the left, no diffuser, image on the right with the diffuser. So very important to have the diffuser with you. And again, these were both on cloudy days. You would maybe assume that on a cloudy day, you wouldn't need a diffuser because you already have a giant diffuser up there, the clouds. But there is, again, some, reflection and intensity and stuff coming from those clouds that tends to wash out certain subjects. Now, not all subjects this happens to. Again, it has to be the right angle to the sky, and some days maybe the clouds are a little heavier, a little whiter, a little darker, so it may alter on different days. Now, on sunny days, now make sure you listen to this. On sunny days, I'm diffusing my subject 100% of the time from the sunlight. I never let the sun hit my subject unless I'm using sun for special effect like backlighting. But other than that, I'm generally never going to let that sunlight hit my subject. I am always going to diffuse it because there's three things that happen when sunlight hits your subject. One is it can alter the color of the subject and actually change the color of the subject. It can wash out colors, just like on cloudy days. You get some harsh sunlight hit your subject, you can wash it out. And then thirdly, it can create shadows in areas that I might not want shadows. So there's three bad things that happen when sun hit my subject. This image on the left side here, that is a sumac branch that has early morning sunlight hitting that branch. And you can see what's happened to the leaves. They are a yellowish green color because the sunlight has altered the color of the subject. Now, once I put the diffuser between the subject and that sunlight, you can see the image on the right side. That is the natural color of the sumac. So again, sunlight alters colors, can wash out colors, and it can create shadows in areas that I may not want shadows. So I'm going to diffuse whatever I'm shooting 100% of the time on sunny days. And then depending on the subject and how it's angled to the sky on cloudy days and whether I'm seeing any loss of colors in the subject, I'll use my diffuser even on cloudy days. So again, that is the most important tool when you go out to shoot. If I leave my diffuser home, I'm pretty unhappy with myself. I may be able to maybe shade the subject with my body sometimes. I can get in position to kind of shade the subject by using my body, but much nicer to have that diffuser where you can just pop it over top of your subject. Now, sometimes you may use your diffuser even indoors. Sometimes I'm shooting indoors and I'm shooting a subject that there might be lights coming from a window inside and that hits the subject at a right angle and creates little white, hot spots, little white spots. And so I may end up even having to use that on the inside of my home when I'm shooting indoors. Now you're wondering, do you have to hold this diffuser all the time? Well, you could if you wanted to. You could just hand hold it. Or you could get yourself a clamp. Now, this is made by the company Wimberly, and it's spelled P-L-A-M-P. And you can see on the left side, there's a large clamp on the left side, and then it has a flexible tubing. And on the other end, you have another smaller clamp. Now, the left side clamp, you could actually, connect that onto a tripod leg. And on the other end, you can put your diffuser in the clamp on the other end, and then you could use that to hold your diffuser over top of your subject. And that works fine if you're shooting in really close to a subject, but let's say you have a longer lens and you're a couple feet away from that subject. And if you attach that clamp onto your tripod, that flexible tubing is not going to be long enough to reach out and hold your diffuser over your subject. So what Wimberly did is they came up with a stake that you can stake into the ground, and then you can attach your the large clamp onto the stake, and on the other end, in this picture, it shows you could actually clamp it on a stem of a flower if it's windy out, or you could use that clamp to hold your diffuser over top of your subject. So that way you'd be free to be able to move around while the clamp is holding your diffuser for you while you're getting your tripod set up and photographing your subject. Now I do all my flower photography indoors on the stairway here. So you were wondering, why would you want to set up on a stairway? Well, that is a 2-story high foyer at the front of my house. And there is a huge window at the top of that foyer that floods that stairway with amazing natural light. It's the brightest place in my home. So I started out 20 years ago shooting indoors next to a door wall, big open window. It had a table set up there, and I also used another picture window in the living room. And I found that it was too directional, the lights coming in from one angle. Whereas in the stairway, I noticed that the light seems to wrap itself around the subject there. And it's not as directional as it is when you're set up next to a window. And I like natural light. All my, things, everything I shoot is done with natural light. There's no flash. So that works the best for me. Now, the problem with shooting indoors, and especially on my stairway here, is I don't want the stairs as the background behind my flowers, right? So I have to put some kind of a background behind it. Now, when I first started, I was using black fleece. I was using white foam core, mat board, things like that as backgrounds behind my subjects, but all my flower shots were coming out with black and white backgrounds. And I never felt that that looked natural. I wanted my flower shots to look like I photographed them out in the field, like they were done naturally out in the field. So what I did was I created my own backgrounds and printed them out, and I use those as my backgrounds when I'm shooting indoors. So what I do is I go out to, say, a local park, or you can actually just do this with the grass in your backyard and get the same effect. But this is a tall field grass in my backyard, or I'm sorry, in my one of my parks near my home. And I've set up my camera on my tripod, and I've got my 90mm macro lens. I would say that you're better off to do this with a macro lens rather than a zoom lens. The macro lens seems to work a little better at this. So I have manually focused onto this grass to show you what it looks like. Now, when you're manually focusing, you know that if you take that focusing ring and you go a little bit left, a little bit to the right of the focus point, the subject will start to go out of focus, go soft. So what you want to do is take that focusing ring, rotate it way, way to the left, and then go the opposite way, way to the right. Now on my lens, if I take it to the right side and I keep rotating, that subject right there will start to go out of focus to the point where it is a solid green color. And when you get it to that solid green color, you photograph it and you get that. So that grass that you see right there with the focusing ring, taken all the way to the right side, just keep rotating and rotating until it comes solid green, and you photograph it and you get that. Now that is a natural green out in nature that I can use as a background behind my subject to look like I shot it out in nature. So I used to print on matte paper. Don't use any glossy papers. Don't use, like even lusters or semi-glosses. Use a paper that has no sheen to it, which is a matte paper. And that works better when you're shooting with that, because if the light hits a glossy paper, it'll kind of wash it out a little bit, cause some hot spots and stuff. So make sure you print it on a matte paper. Now, let's say that you're looking at, that last image and saying, well, it's really nice and solid green, but I want a little bit of texture in there, a little bit of blotchiness. So this is a different subject. So when I'm taking it out of focus, I just don't take it to a solid color. I leave a little bit of texture, a little bit of blotchiness in there, and you end up with something like that, see? So you can take it to whatever level you want to take it to and photograph it. And you can have some with solid colors, some with just little textures in there. Or maybe even a little more textures in there. This is a different subject with some little yellow flowers and some kind of earthy tone browns, and you get more of a yellowish green there. And here's one with some pink flowers, and you get pinks and greens. So you can go to areas like botanical gardens, which have large plots of colorful flowers, and just take them out of focus. And you'll have plenty of different color backgrounds that you can use when you're shooting indoors. Now, when I ask macro photographers, what do they struggle with? The first thing they say, it's the depth of field. They don't understand what f-stops they should be shooting in, and they don't understand how much depth of field they get at all those different f-stops. And it's actually pretty simple. It's not that difficult. Now, there's two different styles on the screen here. Now, on the left side, that is what we call a soft focus flower photography. And this is a really popular style amongst macro photographers. A lot of them you'll see that use lens babies to create this look. But you can kind of get the same look with just a traditional macro lens as a lens, baby. You're just shooting at the smallest f-stop number, could be a 2.8, 3.5, and you're going to get a real shallow depth of field. In this case, all I have is just this little area right in here in focus. And you can see you soften down all around that focus area by using the smallest f-stop. Again, it could be a 2.8 or a 3.5, depending on your macro lens. So that is a style, like I say, that a lot of macro photographers like to do is a soft focus flower photography. Now, I will tell you, though, that if you're going to shoot that style and you're going to show it to your family and friends and, coworkers or, neighbors or whatever, you may get a lot of funny looks, because what happens is the people that are non-photographers, non-artistic people will look at an image like this and say, well, why is it out of focus? Because every picture they take with their cell phone and their point and shoots gets it all in focus. So, you got this expensive camera and you can't get it in focus. So it's very difficult to get any appreciation out of people when they're not photographers and not non-artistic type people. But if you show this to another macro photographer, they eat it up. They love it. Okay. I've had people that have told me that even in their camera clubs, they've presented images at their monthly competition of soft focus flowers. And even the photographer judges will say, well, I wish it had a little more in focus. So sometimes even the judges don't understand this style, but again, macro photographers seem to love it. Now, the image on the right side, that is an image that has everything in focus from top to bottom, side to side, front to back. And that is done with the highest f-stop, f32. Now, some lenses might only go to f22. Most of them go to f32 though. So, and actually, most new lenses nowadays are what they call variable on both ends, low and high. And so my lenses, they say they go to f32 and they do stop there if I'm a distance from my subject. But as I'm moving closer and closer to the subject, it actually goes up higher than 32, goes up to 45, 54. And I've had it one time at 62. So you have to watch that. When I refer to shooting f32, I mean whatever your highest f-stop goes to when you're shooting your subject. Now, these are examples, again, of shallow depth of field, smallest f-stop, 2.8 or 3.5. This is a trillium flower, and all I did was focus on the edge of the petal right here. And you can see I've got very little in focus, that edge right there. And then the small f-stop will give me that shallow depth of field to soften the flower and then blur that background to a solid color. There's another one of a dragonfly face, and you can see just behind that little head, which is in focus, you already see the softness in the body, and then you see the grass in the background just softens into that solid color green. Again, smallest f-stop. This is a goat's beard seed head, and you can see I've got very little in the focus, maybe a little bit of the stem right here. And then with that small f-stop 2.8, it softens all the subject into that, kind of what we call dream-like look, kind of like you're in a dream looking at it, all soft and fuzzy. Now, again, this is the other side. This is going to the highest end of the f-stop, the f32. And this is a nice rose shot, everything in focus, top to bottom, side to side, front to back. Same with this flower shot right here, f32. Got it all in focus. And the frog shot you saw earlier, f32. Now, I did an article for Outdoor Photographer magazine a few years back, and the editor emails me. This image was part of that article, and he emailed me. He says, you listed the f-stop on that frog shot at f32. Is that correct, or did you make a mistake? I says, no, it's f32. I said, you have the file. You can go and check the file, and it'll tell you what it is. And so about an hour later, he emails me back. He said, I checked the file. You're right. It's f32. He says, I just never heard of anybody shooting that high f-stop. I says, I do it all the time because I need that depth of field. Now, another interesting thing that I never knew, I learned this about a year ago, is there's a book, you can buy it on Amazon. That's where I found it. And in 1932, I believe it was, Ansel Adams, Edward Weston, and 5 other photographers, I believe there was 7 of them, that started a camera club in California, and they called that camera club Group F64. And their philosophy is they wanted everything in focus from front to back. And so what they did was they bought lenses that went up to f/64, and that's where they shot their images at. And so here we have the most famous of all photographers, Ansel Adams, shooting at high f-stop to get maximum depth of field in his subjects. The image on the left side, that was a pair of sunflowers I bought at a farmer's market near my home, brought them home, just laid them on top of each other in the foyer of my home, and got over top and photographed them. Because they're deep, big, deep subjects and a lot of depth from front to back, I used the highest f-stop to get the maximum depth of field out of my lens to get everything in focus. So if you're interested, pick that book up. It's pretty interesting read, how they started that group and how they all decided they were going to shoot at the high f-stops to get maximum depth of field on their subjects. Now, a lot of you are thinking, Mike, I've been in this photo business for a long time, and I've always been told you shouldn't shoot over f/16 because you're going to get diffraction, the dreaded diffraction. Diffraction is something that happens when you shoot at those high f-stops, and inside your lens, there is an aperture that opens and closes as you change your f-stop. Now, when you're shooting at the 2.8, the smallest, f-stop on my macro lens, the aperture inside that lens opens to what we call wide open. It is wide open inside there. And that is at the 2.8. And that gives us that shallow depth of field when we shoot. Now, when we want to get into the higher f-stops, move up into the higher f-stops for more depth of field, that aperture inside, as we go to f8 and f11, f16, 22, 32, that aperture inside the lens starts to shrink to a smaller and smaller and smaller opening until you get to 32, or the highest f-stop, and it's a real small little opening inside that lens. Now, when you photograph your subject, the light that's coming from that subject into your lens is now trying to squeeze through this little opening in the aperture. And as it's trying to squeeze through that little hole, it tends to kind of shift a little bit. And when it hits your sensor, it creates a little bit of softness in the details. You don't get the sharpest quality out of the lens shooting at f/32. You're going to get a little softness there. Now, a lot of times people will they'll tell you that you're going to get this diffraction, your image is going to come out of your camera all blurry and scare the hell out of you. And that's just not the case. It's just a softness in the image. It's not like your image is going to completely be blurry. So a lot of people have been afraid of this diffraction for years. Now, the great thing about digital photography is that we have the ability to correct that diffraction through our post-processing tools. Now, we do a lot of post-processing where we alter the exposure in our images in post-processing. We alter the contrast, we alter the colors. We can also sharpen the image with the sharpening programs that are offered. Now, every program that sells software for post-processing will sell you or will include some type of a sharpening program. Nick software has it, Photoshop has it, Topaz has it, Smartphoto has it, On1, all those different, software programs will have some kind of a tool in there to sharpen your image if it's a little bit on the soft side. So we do have the ability to correct this. Now, this is a sunflower that I photographed last year, actually. I think it was in August or something like that. And as you can see, this is shot at f/32, and it's not tack sharp, but it's not blurry either. I mean, it's not horrible. Again, this is kind of what you're going to get when you pull your image out of your camera after you've shot at f/32, a slight softness. Now, once I take it into my Smart Photo Editor, which is the process program that I use for my post-processing, I'll do a crop on this, and then I'll sharpen it, and I'll get that right there. So you can see that's pretty darn sharp looking. There's no problem taking those images that have a little slight softness from the diffraction and creating that nice sharpness with the sharpening tools that we have. So I don't worry about shooting at high f-stops. My main goal is I need to get depth of field. Same with this little sunflower here, where it's kind of playing peekaboo there. Now I'm going to crop this and sharpen it, and you'll end up with that right there. Okay, so again, we have a tool to correct this sharpening, so you should not be afraid of shooting at high f-stops, because you do have the ability to correct it and sharpen your image with the slight softness you get. Now, I will tell you another thing. The lenses that are being produced today are better quality lenses that produce less diffraction than the older lenses back in the old days. So you do have a less chance of diffraction with the newer lenses that we have today than you did back in the old days. Now, I want to show you the difference between the 2.8 and the 32 on this ruler here. Now, I've got a Tamron 90mm on my camera, and I'm at an angle to that ruler. So in other words, the front of my lens is not running parallel to that ruler, which most time when we're shooting subjects, like flat subjects especially, we like to get parallel to that subject. But you may not always be able to get parallel to a subject. You may have to shoot at an angle to it. So, you know, this is to show you when you have to shoot at an angle to a flat subject like that, you're going to get a very small amount of depth of field when you're shooting at that 2.8, which I'll show you right here. Now, all I'm getting in focus on that ruler is 1 tiny 1/8 of an inch. 1/8 of an inch. And that's where, you know, macro photographers and people that get into macro struggle, is this shallow depth of field they tend to get. Most people, for whatever reason, I don't understand why they always shoot in such small f-stops all the time, but a lot of people, that's where they are, and then they wonder why they can't get much in field. Now, you can see just outside of that little 1/8 of an inch, this line and this line are already starting to go fuzzy. All right, so we're getting very, very little of sharp focus on that ruler at 2.8. Now you can see over here at the f32, I'm getting the ruler all in focus. All right, now it's a little bit slightly soft at the very edges, the outer edges, because even when you're in that close, even at 32, you may have a little slight softness on the outer edges. But again, that can be easily sharpened in post-processing. So I don't worry about that. Now, this is a spruce cone that I hung 4 feet in front of the spruce tree. So remember that tree is 4 feet behind that cone. Now, I shot this with a 180 macro lens, and I used the smallest f-stop on that lens. It happened to be 3.5. Now, I did set up the front of the lens so it was parallel to the flat part of the cone right here. Now at 3.5, because it's perfectly parallel, it did get most of the flat part of the cone in focus. But when that cone starts to dip down to the tip a little bit, you can already see it's out of focus right here. So as I said, 3.5, I might be getting a 1/4 inch in focus. And the needles that are in the foreground out in front of the cone, you can see those are soft and fuzzy. But look at the tree in the background at 4 feet behind. That 3.5 doesn't have enough depth of field to reach back and pull in any details, so it turns it into almost a solid color in the background. And that's kind of what we want when we shoot macro. We like to have our subject in focus, but have that nice clean background behind it. So 3.5 doesn't give us enough depth of field to pull in any details on that tree back there. Now, I want to get more depth of field on my cone and my needles, so I have to go to a higher f-stop to get more depth of field. I'm going to go up to f8 now. Now at f8, the cone now is all in focus, so it's got enough depth of field down here now. The needles are not totally in focus yet, but they're better. But look what happens at the spruce tree 4 feet behind. f8 now has enough depth of field to start pulling in some shading of the needles in the background. They're still a little soft, but starting to get a little cluttered in the background. So I still need to get a little more depth of field. I want those needles in the foreground in focus. So now I'm going to double this and go to f16. When I do that, my subject, my main subject, is now tack sharp throughout the whole thing. But look what happens at 4 feet. It's starting to pull in the needles of the spruce tree at 4 feet. So f16, it's starting to clutter up my background. So what most photographers want, or what they're trying to achieve, is to get your subject in focus, like you see over here on the right side, all in focus, but yet maintain this nice clean background behind it like that. And it's actually very simple. It's not that difficult to do. These are examples of images that I photographed out in the field. These are subjects that I got down and low to the ground and photographed them, and produced a fully focused subject with a nice clean background behind it. This is a jewel weed with some dewdrops on a little stem and on top of that little leaf there. That green that you see is grass in the background that was blurred out. So my subject's all in focus and got a nice clean blurred background from the grass. And there's another flower shot that again, nice clean background with a fully focused subject. And our critter portraits, we want our critter to be all in focus with a nice clean background behind it. That's grass in the background. And this little hoverfly on a knapweed flower, all in focus, nice clean background. And this dewy covered dragonfly at 7 o'clock in the morning with a pond in the background, creating that nice blue color. So this is what we don't want. We don't want our critter shots with, clutter in the background. We want nice clean backgrounds. All right, so this is how you do it. This is very simple. It's not difficult, as you'll see. This is what I call the key to flower and critter portraits. So what you need to do is find the right subject. And so what I'm looking for is a subject that is far away from clutter. All right. And then I need to find the right angle, camera angle to that subject with the background as far away from the subject as possible. Now, the farther away the background moves from the subject, the higher the f-stop can go and get more depth of field on our subject and still maintain a blur. So very, very important that you find the right subject, find the right camera angle to the subject with the background as far away as possible so you can shoot in higher f-stops, get your subject in focus. Now, this is a field of Dame's rockets, and this is where I shot that image that I showed you earlier with the diffuser, where it had the kind of light, kind of pink type petals, and I turned it green with the diffuser over top. This is where I shot it. This is the day I shot it. You can see it's kind of an overcast day. Now, when you photograph these rows of Sharon, as you can, or I'm sorry, the, I forgot the name of them now. Anyway, when you shoot these flowers, the Dame's rockets, you can see they grow in a big clutter here, right? They're all clustered together. And the problem is if you try to photograph any one of these flowers within this cluster, where is your background? Well, it's literally inches behind the flower. So that's not going to work. So what did I tell you? You need to find an isolated flower away from clutter. So what you want to do when you get to these fields like this and these big clusters of flowers is you go out to the outside perimeters and you'll usually find, one here, one there, growing by itself away from all the clutter. So this guy right here is the one that that I ended up finding. And you can see it's all by itself. It's away from all that clutter. Now, in the background, there's a wooded area back there of greens, and that is about 15 feet behind that flower. So with that flower having a background 15 feet away, it'll allow me to get into that higher f-stop, maybe an f11. No, you're not going to go to 22 on something like this or 32, but you're going to get into the f11s, f16s and get enough depth of field to get that subject in focus and still maintain that blurred background. This is a little bladder campion flower, and again, too cluttered. You wouldn't photograph that, but where this tall grass is growing, some of those flowers grew right straight through the grass, and they're way above the grass. So you see right up here, that's the ones we want to shoot right here, or maybe this one over here, because there's nothing behind it but that wooded area there or the grass back there, which is about 15 to 20 feet away. So now again, I can go ahead and shoot that in an f11, f16 and get it all in focus and maintain a blurred background. So as you can see, this is not difficult stuff. It's just a matter of having the knowledge to go and find the right subject and shoot it where the background is as far away as possible. This is a big swampy area, and I was walking down a trail and I happened to see this little group of flowers right here. Now you can see how far away the background is. If I wanted to use the greens for my background, or I can use the water way off in the background, and I can shoot it at 22 if I wanted to and get that all in focus with that solid color background from that water way off in a distance. Same here, you see this little flower right here, and you can see subject matter is way off in a distance. So that's the one that I would shoot. Or maybe this one, look at this. That tree line there is about 100 yards away, or the grass is far enough away that I can photograph that and get it all in focus at f11s, f16s, and get a solid color green background behind that. Very easy to do. So let's go back to the cone here. And remember, when we shot at 3.5 smallest f-stop, we blurred out that tree at 4 feet, right? But then when we went to f8, we started to pull in some of those needles at 4 feet. But let's say that we had a different camera angle to shoot this subject. We moved over a little bit right or a little bit left, and there was another spruce tree, but that spruce tree was 10 feet behind the cone. And we shot it at f8. F8 doesn't have enough depth field to reach back 10 feet. So that would just become a solid blur. And then if I found a different angle to photograph that cone with the spruce trees now 20 feet behind it, now I can get into the f11s, f16, photograph that, get it all in focus, and still maintain a blurred background. So it's all about moving that background away from your subject. Now, let's say you get into this situation here. You are at a field that has tall grass, and you're going to photograph these little white daisies, oxeye daisies, they're called. And as you can see here, whoops, as you can see, none of these little daisies are in a position where we could photograph them with a background that is any distance away. They're all in this tall grass, which means the grass is directly behind, and we're not going to be able to photograph those flowers with the background off in a distance. So sometimes you're going to get into that situation where you just can't find that flower that you want with the background off in a distance. So then you have to learn when to walk away. Okay. There's going to come those times when it's better off to not shoot something and then get a poor image, poor quality image. Just don't bother shooting and go find something else to shoot. But if you really needed to get a photograph of that oxeye daisy, there is another option that you have where you can photograph that and still get a blurred background behind it. Now, you remember those backgrounds that I taught you how to make earlier that you use indoors when you're photographing your flowers indoors? Well, guess what? You take the backgrounds with you when you go outdoors and you shoot with the background behind your subject. Now, you can shoot at f32 if you want, because it's all it's going to do is reach behind that subject and capture that solid color print that you put behind it. So that's your option. If you're in a situation where you can't find a flower with a background off in a distance, you can pull out your backgrounds out of your backpack and stick a background behind it, and you'll have a nice solid color there. It'll look identical that if you shot it in the field naturally, nobody will be able to tell the difference. Now, one thing about in the woods where I live in the springtime, the flowers are very low to the ground. They're very difficult to shoot because they're so low. This is a group of lily of the valley flowers that's growing in this field or in this woods here. Very difficult to find a subject in here that I like that isn't full of clutter behind it, okay? So I have to use backgrounds in this situation. I cannot shoot these with a background off in a distance. So I bring my own backgrounds out and position those behind my subject. And as you can see, I'm using my plamp. You remember the plamp that I talked about? You can see it right here. It's got the stake in the ground. I'm clamped onto the stake, and you can see I'm holding my background behind my flower there. So your plamp system has a couple functions. It can hold your diffuser. It can hold on to a stem of a flower if it's moving in a slight wind, or it can hold your background when you're shooting low to the ground like that. All right, so when I shot that with that background, this is what I got. Now, all I really needed to do, I like the flowers, I like the leaves and the composition. All I needed to do is clear up this little area right here. If I hadn't had backgrounds, I would see a bunch of clutter and lines and things in the background. So just help clean that up. Now, when you're using your backgrounds out in the field, you're not going to want to just take a print, you know, your matte print out there, because it's going to be floppy, it's flimsy. You want to back it with some kind of a material to make it stiff. So I use either foam core, I use matte board, you could use cardboard if you wanted to, just something that you can attach that print to make it stiff. Now, there is a thing that you can buy that you can easily, you know, put your prints on the background, is to go out and buy what's called carpet tape. It's for laying carpet and holding carpets down on floors. And carpet tape has glue on both sides of the tape. So what you do is you pull off the one side, stick it onto your background, pull off the other side, and you'll have a sticky surface that you can put your print onto your hard surface that'll stiffen up that print. So you want to make sure that you get some kind of a backing. Like I said, I've used mat board, I use foam core, or you could use even cardboard, anything to stiffen those prints up. Now, as far as the sizes that I carry out in the field when I go out, I have a small backpack, so the largest size that I can fit is an 8.5 by 11 print, which is a standard photo print, paper that you can buy is 8.5 by 11, and that fits into my backpack pretty well. Also is generally big enough to any flower that I shoot, it's big enough to use as a background behind it. If you have a larger background or you shoot indoors and you want a larger one, you could always print, maybe 11 by 14s or 13 by 19s and back those up and carry those with you out in the field. Or if you're shooting in the house, larger ones will work better. So that's, I like to kind of go out there and find that single flower with a background off in a distance and shoot it and get that nice blurred background. I feel like I've accomplished something. I feel good about it. But a lot of times I'm in situations where I have no choice but to use a background in order to clean up that background. Now, another place that I use backgrounds all the time, almost on every shot, is in botanical gardens. You see, in botanical gardens, everything is planted very congested and very close together. There's almost no way you can shoot a flower in a botanical garden and have a background 10, 15, 20 feet away. It's impossible. So in botanical gardens, I'm pretty much using my backgrounds on every shot because there's so much clutter around those subjects. So that's something that, again, is very useful when you're shooting in those cluttered areas or maybe backyard gardens, again, where it's really cluttered up with flowers. Give yourself options. So when you're out there shooting those f-stops and you're not sure which f-stop's going to work, shoot multiple f-stops. I would say minimum at least 3 f-stops. Even better would be 5 different f-stops. While you've got your tripod set up, all you have to do is just change the f-stop, maybe reset your exposure and then shoot at least, I always like to shoot maybe 5 different f-stops. You never want to come home, look at an image where you only shot 1 f-stop of that subject and then complain because you didn't get enough depth of field on it, or you got too much depth of field. Maybe you wanted a softer look to it. So by shooting those 5 different f-stops, that'll give you options when you get home, and then you can decide which one worked out the best and scrap the other ones if you want. But you want to have those options when you get home. So I set up these 2 calla lilies in my house just to show you an example of what I'm talking about. Now I just positioned 1 calla lily, this little area up in here that you see right here in front of the one which is in the background. And I shot it at the smallest f-stop, the 2.8. And you can see all I have in focus is very, very little right in here somewhere. All right. And you can see it starts to go soft on the foreground calla lily and then the softness on the one in the background. Then I switched my f-stop to f8. Shot it at f8. Now you can see a little more depth of field, a little more focus coming in on both front and back flower. And then I went up to an f11. When I say shoot 5 different f-stops, I don't mean f-stops that are right next to each other. You need to skip a few f-stops and skip a few f-stops, because if you shot them all 5 of them right next to each other, you wouldn't see much of a difference. You have to have at least a 2 or 3 difference, in the different f-stops. So this would be the f11. Then I went to an f16. And then I went to an f22. Now you can see f22 got most everything in focus, and I could still go higher, and even it's a little bit soft down in here. And if I went a little higher, I could get even all that in focus, but we stopped at f22. So now I can go back and look at these 5 different f-stops and decide which one I like. So I can look at this and say, do I like it all in focus? Or do I want the f16 where I get a slight softness on the back flower there? Or do I want the f11 with a little more softness on the back flower? Do I want an f8 a little more? Or do I want maximum softness at 2.8? So you can see a big difference in those 5 different f-stops. But again, when you come home from a shoot, you want to make sure that you have these 5 f-stops, because you may not be able to go back and reshoot that if you only took 1 f-stop. or it may not even be there when you go back to reshoot. So make sure while you're there, you got your tripod set up, shoot 5 different f-stops, and then worry about when you get home. Okay, gang, that's all I'm going to teach you for today. But if you want to learn a lot more, I mean, a lot more about macro timers, because there's a ton more to teach you about. You can join my Macro Photo Club, which I started 4 years ago. And I came up with the idea to produce instructional videos to teach people and put together a club type situation where people would join as this macro club, and you'd have access to the 260 instructional videos, which cover 4 categories. So you'll get videos that covers me out in the field, actually shooting subjects in the field. I have post-processing videos. I have videos on composition, and I have videos on equipment, all types of equipment that we use. There's about 50 videos just on equipment. You have a lot of information that you'll learn from to do this. And also we have a Facebook group for our membership only on Facebook. And there's about 1,300 of our members are on the Facebook group, and they post images, and you can go and view their images every day. They're being posted. And we usually have a theme of the month that you can photograph that theme and post your images of the theme each month. And we are at 2,600 members now from 28 countries. I also have 12 sponsors, and each month, one of our sponsors offers one of their products that I can raffle off to our 2,600 members. Lifetime membership is $99. You only pay one time and you're a member for life. There's no more payments after that. If you're interested in joining and learning more about this, you can go to my website, which is tinylandscapes.com. And when you get there, look at the top of the page, and you'll see in the center, it'll say Macro Photo Club. Click on that link, and it'll give you all the information about the club and how to sign up. So, okay, Chuck or Pam.
Yeah, Mike, that was wonderful.
It
I
was
learned
great.
so much from that video.
Awesome.
I think we need to have a macro outing now so we can use all the tools that you just told us about.
Well, look
Exactly.
I think your
I'm
idea
going
is
to
good.
open it up to anyone who has questions.
Yep.
I wanted to know what the ISO setting you were using.
On my D7500 and my D7000, I was shooting at 1000 ISO. And on my new Fuji camera, I talked to the Fuji rep, and he said, you can shoot pretty darn high with that camera on the ISO. And so I'm at 2000 ISO on my Fuji, and I still get really nice, clean images out of it. So when you're shooting, F32, and if it's maybe a cloudy day, you're going to, need to speed up that camera. So the higher ISO takes care of that. If you were to see any of my videos out in the field where I talk about, I'm shooting, and I only shoot on cloudy days typically. You'll see me out in the field, dark conditions many times, and I'm shooting at F32, and you can hear that camera click, and it's pretty fast. I'm not getting these, 1 second, 2 second, 3 second exposures. With those higher ISOs, it has no problem, getting a fast shutter speed. That's really nice about having these digital cameras and being able to ramp up on those ISOs. And most cameras today, you can shoot much higher than we used to back in the old days. Cripe, in the old days, my first digital camera was a Fuji S2, and you couldn't even shoot at 400 ISO without getting, distorted looking images. But now my D7000, even, I could shoot it at 3200 ISO and still get clean images out of it.
What is the brand of the diffuser that you recommend?
Well, the one that I use is from Hunt's Photo. It's made by ProMaster. Sometimes at local camera stores, they're hard to find because they're not a big demand for 12-inch diffusers. So they're hard to find at your local camera stores many times. So you might have to go online. Hunt's Photo carries them, and they carry the ProMaster brand, and it runs, $12 or something like that. They're cheap.
So you shoot mostly in manual?
Yes, I do. I don't say that you have to shoot in manual. I mean, that's kind of how I started out shooting. But you could shoot in aperture priority. Your main thing is making sure you get your f-stop where you want it, right? And you can shoot in aperture priority and let the camera do the exposure for you. I do manual, but you don't have to do manual. You can do aperture priority. A lot of photographers do it that way too.
Okay, and the other question I had was, how do you feel about the rings, adding rings to lens.
The extension tubes.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you have a standard lens and you want to get in closer to your subject, you can add extension tubes between the camera body and the lens. And it comes in a set of 3 tubes. You could add 1 tube, 2 tubes, or 3. As you add more tubes, you get in closer and closer to the subject. You take away tubes, you back up from the subject. They also have close-up filters that screw on the front of the lens. Nisi makes them. I have a Nisi close-up filter that I put on my macro lens, and it takes my macro lens from a 1:1 to a 2:1, doubles the magnification. So yeah, you can use them on your macro lens to get in even closer, or your regular lens that'll allow you to get in closer to your subject with that. So yeah, they work well. No problem with those different tools.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
So what is in your backpack that you normally carry?
I don't really carry that much. When I do my macro workshops where I have a lot more time, I do talk about all the different little accessories. I carry a little, pair of scissors. I carry a little tweezers. I carry a multi-tool knife, kit thing. I have, like tools and things like that. Basically all I'm carrying is my camera and my 18-400, or with my Fuji, I'm carrying an 18-300 and a macro lens. That's about it. And my diffuser, of course, got to have my diffuser. I do carry a little small portable LED light. Very rarely do I use it. I don't use any flash systems. I only use natural light, and whether I'm indoors or outdoors. And I do occasionally use a little tiny flash, or not a flash, but a little LED light. If I'm shooting a subject and maybe there's an area that's a little bit dark and I want to brighten that area up, I might use a little fill flash in an area, but that's even rare when that even happens. But camera bag, I carry my backgrounds in there, my clamp, my diffuser, but not a lot in there. Yeah.
Mike, do you ever use like a little spray bottle to kind of mist them a little bit?
I don't. Typically I'm out in the mornings at daybreak and it's dew on things already. And so I don't really need to, but I remember out in California one time I was talking about, getting out early in the morning and shooting dew, and they're going, we don't have dew here. So they would have to manufacture dewdrops with a spray bottle. So in my area where I live, I don't really run into an issue where I need to spray something.
Okay.
But that would be the option if you needed to.
Do you do any focus stacking?
No, because I just taught you how to get it done with one shot.
Mhm.
That's
I
good.
call focus stacking a waste of time.
Mm.
All right. Now, let's say that you were doing high magnification. I mean, I was just showing you how small of depth of field you get at, minimum focus distance on a macro lens of 1/8 of an inch. Now, when you start getting into 2:1, 3:1, 4:1, 5:1 magnification, your depth of field shrinks down to fractions. Okay. And so those people that shoot, a fly's eye fill in the frame, a fly's head fill in the whole frame, they're in very high magnification and they get very, very little depth of field. Even the highest f-stop won't get them enough depth of field. So they have to do focus stacking to get all that in focus. But for close-up photography, as you saw those images I showed you, they're all in focus at f32. I have no issues getting, anything, even at 1:1 magnification, I get it all in focus at f32. So I just don't see any point in focus stacking when you're shooting in that range, when you have an f-stop that'll get you all the depth of field you want. The reason why most people don't shoot at those high f-stops is because they've always been preached to that you don't shoot high f-stops because of that diffraction I was talking about. So they're paranoid of the diffraction. So that's why they do focus stacking. But as I just showed you, you can go and shoot with the high f-stop, get a little soft image out of the camera, but then sharpen it with the sharpening tools that's offered in post-processing. It's just, to me, it's like ridiculous going through the hassle of shooting 12, 15, 20 images of something and then trying to focus stack it. Now, I don't know about where you live, but where I live, it's windy every day. It's very rare when we get a day, you can go out during the daytime and shoot a flower, which is not moving back and forth. I'd like to see how you're going to get a focus stacked image, of, a dozen images of a flower when the thing's moving back and forth. So yeah, to me, it's just a waste of time. Unless you're shooting, like I say, very high magnification, that's a different story. But just go to that f32 and you'll get it all in focus if you're just doing close-up photography. And then again, make sure that you're using your tools to process and get your sharpening. Look at any of my images on my website. Anything you see where it's all in focus has been done at the highest f-stop, and it's very sharp.
Wow.
Good deal.
Okay, any more questions?
I had one
Well-
other question.
Yeah.
With some, I wasn't sure which post-processing you are using mostly.
Mhm.
But one of the things with Lightroom Classic now is you can mask and select subject, and you can invert where you're now selecting everything around the subject. Do you ever do that and then decrease clarity or focus on the background using that masking tool?
No, I don't, but you're absolutely right. I mean, you can shoot a flower and clear up the background in Photoshop. I mean, that's not impossible to do that, right? So for those who have that skill, you could take care of your background in post-processing with no problem. That's not the way I do it. I typically will, like I say, show you, like I showed you, try to get that flower in focus with a blurred background off in a distance, or I'll put my background behind the subject and then photograph it. And then just take that image into my program, which I use Smart Photo Editor, it's called. That's my main processing program. It's called Smart Photo Editor. And I use that for my main processing. And then I will use Elements program from Photoshop just to clone out little things in the image that I want to clone out. I'll use Nik software occasionally, the Viveza program for altering, little areas, exposure in certain areas. But my main program is Smart Photo Editor, and I don't do any type of, like adding backgrounds. Now I do add some textured backgrounds in Smart Photo Editor. You'll see some of my images, they'll have a textured background, and that's just a filter that I applied onto it to add that background. But I've never done anything like what you're saying where I've altered a background in Photoshop. I've never done anything like that, but I know it's there and it can be done with that. And if you're skilled at that, you could shoot a flower with a poor background behind it and just take the background out, put your own background in. Yeah. I have a friend that photographs landscapes, and then he goes out and photographs all kinds of cool clouds, and then he just adds the clouds into his landscapes. Right? I mean, we all know that's happening out there. I don't know. That stuff doesn't bother me though. I figure as long as you come up with a final image that looks pretty cool, it's all art to me. But that's a good point. You can do it in Photoshop.
For those who are adept at Photoshop.
Yeah. I went to a program years ago on Photoshop. Eddie Tapp was the guy who showed up in the area, in Detroit area, and I went and saw his program, and my head was spinning when I left that class. All the things that he showed you could do, but I was never really interested in getting into all the stuff that he showed us. But it was amazing what you can do with that program. But none of it ever interests me. I just like to shoot the images, basic processing, and maybe add a filter or something like that.
Mhm. Excellent. Well, Mike, this has been an excellent program.
Thanks, man.
I have done some macro photography, and I've always looked at these very, very blurry backgrounds and have
Wondered.
been stymied at how to get them. And it was like very easy, just choose the right subject.
That's what I tell people all the time. I says, macro is actually very easy if you just know all these little tricks or tips, right? It's really not that difficult. The difficult part is finding good subject matter. That's the part that's the most important is, and I always tell people there's three things that make a successful image. It's a great subject matter, good composition, and good post-processing. It's really not that difficult. And as you can see, it's not hard to blur those backgrounds.
The members next month, the share and learn is fill the frame, which is macro.
Perfect.
So they'll be able to take some of your tips and techniques and maybe use them this month to come up with some photos to share with us.
Awesome. That's my favorite thing to do is fill the frame.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, well,
All right.
thank you so much. I
Yeah.
really Appreciate it. Thank
Thanks a
you.
lot, all.
There we go.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think
Thanks,
Mike
Mike.
helped her.
Yeah, thanks, Mike.
All right. So anyways, this is just the Facebook and the Kingwood Photo Club info. And Chuck, you want to go over the calendar?
Well, let's see what we got. Do I remember all this stuff? Well, yeah, we do have the
Adelaide.
photographer's lunch. I understand, Kathy, you went to the last one?
Yes, I
Yes.
did. I had a good time.
Yeah, it's really a good thing. And the in-person ones are great. So we're still doing that. I probably should resend the link to a lot of people who haven't gotten it. We have some new members. They might be interested in joining us.
That 3Bs has really improved their menu since the last time I was there.
You know,
They
but
have
it's
Wonderful
still really,
choices.
it's still really dark. I remember it was the Italian restaurant and it was dark. It's still really dark.
Mhm.
Oh, well,
Hey,
you're
I
eating.
got some
You
good
know where
pictures.
your mouth is. You can get it.
Okay.
Okay, we also have the virtual library series, workshops, and Jim Skeppins has worked. He's got a whole list of topics. Jim's not here tonight. I'm not sure why.
No, he had a dinner engagement.
Okay, well, Jim gave me a list of topics for iPhoneography the other day, and it is a long list. His thinking of having a series of workshops on just the iPhone. I told him that sounds like a good idea. Heck, I'd like to sit down on. There's a whole bunch of different things we can do talking about the iPhone, but we'll talk about it coming up on September 3rd. But he has a lot of ideas on what we could do there, so that might be turned into a SIG of its own. What I learned about
the
the iPhone.
Samsung, can you translate to the?
No, we don't talk anything but iPhone. Sorry.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry. No, if you're not an Apple, but I'm going to tell you, when we went on this last trip, and I'm not saying it, I'm saying this seriously. My wife had her iPhone, which is one of the newer models, and she took pictures better than I could take on most of the time. And for if you're just looking for travel pictures, snapshots of this, that, and the other thing, and taking some nice travel pictures, you can't beat a phone nowadays. So. It sounds pretty hard for everybody with nice big cameras, but I tell you, phones can do a lot, and that's what Jim will be talking about.
Yeah, where do you see the 14 and what's going to come out with the 14?
That's exactly right. I've got
the improvement in the software to back up the lenses. They put the lenses in. Now you've got a new processor and the software. It's going to be phenomenal.
Well, I think so.
Phone companies anymore, they're camera companies.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that the iPhone does what through computation or computing what the other cameras try to do with lens quality. And they're beating it. That's what the future of photography is. It blows my mind. When we were on this trip, there were so many times I just put down my camera and picked up Helen's iPhone and used it, and I was getting such great shots.
Even the Android though, the cameras are much better now.
Yeah.
So all the camera phones are coming up quite a bit.
Yeah. Oh, they really are. I mean, you don't have. I mean, the phone I was using, the camera I was using, my own camera, has a zoom up to 600. Now you can't do that on the phone, but a lot of the other stuff you can do. So, anyways, enough advertising for Jim's course. It should be a good course, and he has a lot of topics, and he probably will have future courses on the same thing. And then post-processing SIG, we do meet once a month. This special interest group has become pretty informal. We just sort of pick topics as we meet and talk about. There's a bunch of us. It's sort of like the lunch group. We like to talk about post-processing, and that's what we do. We sign on once a month on the third Thursday, and just talk about what we love to do, which is post-processing.
What is the topic for the 18th? This
and
Thursday?
That's the thing. I don't think we have a topic.
Okay.
But a lot of times we haven't needed to have a topic. We show up and we usually have plenty to talk about.
Well, I would add we will discuss, most of us are using Lightroom or Luminar or On1 or something. And so we usually talk about what are the new updates, because now they're coming out with an update almost every month.
Yes.
So that's sometimes what the topic is, or Lightroom, the one that Jim uses, the lower level.
Elements, yeah.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
so it is usually the Adobe products, but we do talk about Topaz and Luminar and things like that. And like Chris says, it's usually we'll cover some of the latest updates, gadgetry.
Yeah, usually Chuck will ask me the day before, can you talk about this?
Yeah, and I know that Chris will say yes, because he's a nice guy. Anyways.
Is Randy there?
Hi. Hi,
Hi.
Kathy. Hi. Well, obviously activities have been a bit of a challenge. We realizing that it's just hotter than hot, and adding on to that, I did do the Scott Kelby worldwide walk on Saturday in spring, and it was from 3 to 5 o'clock, and it was hot. It was hot. Yeah. I hung in there, but yeah, there were about 10 of us, and it was pretty miserable. But so having said that, going into September, again, not knowing what our weather is going to be like, I am interested in putting together something at Post Houston. I think that earlier in the year, some folks went there. I think it was when it was freezing cold.
So let's try the other side.
Let's try the other side of it. And what my thought was to do something, like early sunset, because at the rooftop, it's really beautiful, and get some pictures of downtown. And there's a lot to shoot inside as well, where it's nice and cool. And we can also eat there. It's a big food court. If you haven't been there, they've got some great food. So that's my idea for September, just knowing that, maybe people aren't as interested in getting out. Jim and I talked about it, and likely he kind of felt doing it on a weekday rather than a weekend, just because getting there, would be not much traffic on a weekday. Of course, on a weekend, it's going to be more crowded, right? Probably. So it's really just kind of picking the best time. And I hope that if I can get that pulled together, I'll get some information out on it in early, end of August, early September, that we have a few people interested. So, and then Jim and I talked about College Station, because that was originally planned for September and or August, excuse me. And again, with the heat. So now we've moved it to October 22nd. So more will come out about that. And we also had to pick it when the students probably weren't having a football game there, right? So, so that was the other reason for that date. And then Jim I actually put something out on the newsletter about Jim's questions for those that are planning on going to Santa Fe and Albuquerque. And I realized that I probably need to repost that. So I will do that. Kathy, did you have another screen there?
Yeah, this is came out August 7th. It was all the things that the people are need to respond to Jim regarding.
Right.
So
right.
That is the news article.
Well, thank you. But I think I probably need to reset that so that it comes out again, don't you?
Yeah.
You want to have it come back out. So I'll redo that. And I believe I put it on Facebook as well. So
he's trying to arrange a meeting for the 24th, Zoom meeting.
Oh, good. Okay. I know that he felt there were several people going, and I think it was just trying to get his arms around, who's going when and all of that. He and I talked about some other things coming up for the rest of the year, so I'll keep you posted on that.
Yeah, and Randy, I know this afternoon he mentioned to me he saw a post that Chris did on the funeral museum. He mentioned to me this afternoon and said, I think that would be an interesting outing sometime. So,
I didn't see that.
Oh yeah, no, it's actually a good museum.
I just went because I thought, well, maybe it could be a pop-up. I've been wanting to go check it out. It's over on I-45 near Ritchie and that area. And it's part of a school for people in the profession. And then Chuck mentioned that SCI, I guess, is behind it because they're the big funeral homeowners corporation. And it was very good. I just posted about 8 or 9 pictures. You could spend more time in there. I just tried to shoot some detailed shots and get a feel for it. Very good.
Well, good. Yeah. I mean, I definitely feel like pop-ups and something like that, just saying, hey, a few people want to go. Those are great too. So.
Yeah, it could be a pop-up, right?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I'll take a look at that.
Yeah, Jim had that idea.
Oh, Jim,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
All right. So this is the list that you put on there. So it is also on Facebook, and you'll put it out again to remind people. There's not a lot of people right now. I think he said there's like 6.
I think it's pretty low.
Yeah, so that he could also actually send an individual email to them. That might be more effective, because if you're thinking about going now, getting reservations, lodging can be problematic. Okay, this is the Facebook postings. There's a lot of Facebook postings, and I decided just to put a few. I thought John Gray's little, what is that? Camouflage tag? I hope he's got a fan in there or something. Because that, I mean, he's in the shade, but even in the shade, it's like, oh my God. And that thing has to be stifling.
Is
But
that
like,
a hat?
I asked him if he got
the
I
Hummer.
asked him if he got HOA approval, and he said no.
He said no.
He
Oh my
wasn't gonna mess with that.
Geez. And then our lunch, there I am, which was good. I need, Chris, can you send me the photo where you're actually sitting and your wife was taking the picture? Did that turn out?
I have to look. It's on my phone.
Okay.
I'm so bad with looking at phone pictures.
Okay. Well, check a look at it and send it to me.
will.
I think it would be nice to change the header of the photo. And then this Watson Rare Plant Preserve. A couple of people went there. Jim or John did, and I think Debbie did. So that's something else that looks like, with all of the information from the macro that we just learned, that might be a great place to take photos with the of plants and stuff. Use some of that his techniques. And then I had a friend who sent me this, and I thought you all might be interested. There is a photo contest by the Houston Audubon, and I will put this on our website and also on the Facebook with the links. And there's several different bird categories: bird city, birds camera action, not just a small and frame, birds of all feather. So submissions are August 26th. Several of you have done amazing bird work that you might want to look into this and see if either some of your photos could be used, or if you have a need to go out and just try and get a few. But they're very good, and there's like, I think 6 different contest judges, but they also have voting for different pictures. So check this out. All right, share and learn. I will say that numbers of share and learn keep dropping lower and lower. This is like this is a new low for us for this topic, which I thought would be a simple topic, summer. So I guess I need ideas of, what do we want to try and get more people to contribute, share and learn? I mean, I think it's something that we need to have as photographers. We should want to share some of our photos with other people. So I'm kind of at a loss. So if you have any ideas, if you could just send them to me, President at the Photo Club, and just let me know your thoughts on how to get more.
Some of it may just be summer and everybody's gone.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think a lot of that is people aren't traveling as much. They're not collecting all those beautiful pictures from their trips and all that stuff.
Yeah, that could be too. But even going through your catalogs, which is what I did this time. So, but if you have any ideas, just kind of email me and let me know what you think. So as you see, these are the only people that contributed. So, and I thank you all for sending it in, but we also need to get some of the new people that have joined. We're not judging. We just want to have a kind of a share and learn where we're, hey, I took this and this is the story behind it. And it's a little bit getting to know you also. So.
Well, I think it's worth pointing out our share and learn. Some other clubs in the area, like the Woodlands clubs, they really suggest you should go out and take a picture for share and learn. We tend to say, if you want to take a picture, fine. If you have something in your collection, it's fine too. part of that is the sharing and the learning. So I think
Yeah.
for new members, you can use old stuff. It's okay.
On the other hand, I can go through old pictures and say, wow, with a little post-processing, that picture could be halfway decent. So you're learning
Sure.
different ways.
Yeah, that's true. And I think with the Zoom, we're able to tell a little bit more about the photo. So there's more of the story behind it so that it's more interesting and more interactive.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Emily,
Yeah,
like with your bird pictures,
yeah.
I would really like to see, okay, it started this way, and then this is how what I did to it to get it to the final. Because
Okay.
your bird pictures are phenomenal.
Oh, thank you. Wow, that makes me feel good.
And now Emily will start sharing. Listen, what can we say good about Ron? No.
Anyway, we're going to start with Chris.
Okay. Well, when I looked at this topic, I thought, the one thing I think of for summer is water. The ocean, a lake, a stream. We all tend to go to water in the summer. You might walk on a beach in the winter, but you're not going to go swimming. So my shots are all about water, and this was down in Aruba. They do a lot of windsurfing down there, and I spent one evening just photographing. The sunset was great, and I just photographed these guys going back and forth, and I just worked on some pictures like this. To me, it says a lot about the end of summer.
Oh, that's cute.
Okay, this is Grand Shoulder at the beach. It was actually about a few years ago, but what do kids do? They bury each other in the sand. And I had my camera up overhead using the little articulating LCD screen so I could kind of get it lined up and take a picture. So anyway.
Where's that at, Chris?
That was at Galveston.
Galveston?
Yeah. Okay, so this was actually in Aruba, not far from what used to be the Valero refinery or whatever it was called, before that. But anyway, we were in one of these little tents you can rent where you sort of, pay for some chairs and a little cover on the beach because the sun's very hot. And this little girl just came flipping by doing handstands. And I grabbed my camera. This is actually with my cell phone. And I just went click because she was doing handsprings. And she went all the way across. And it was like, I thought, well, what better way to capture that summer mood? Kids are on vacation. The vacations are over soon. So that's my idea of summer.
Oh, thank you.
Look at the water and tell it's not Texas City.
Right. Well, if I had said this was Galveston, you all would have said no.
Emily.
Yeah.
Okay, this is one of my series of 65 to 80 mile an hour shots that I took when we were back from Seattle, and 2 of the 3 people in the car had COVID and I didn't. So I was coming back in a petri dish, but we weren't stopping much anywhere except just to charge. And but there were all of these fabulous thunderstorms going on around. I kept trying to catch a lightning strike, but when you're going 80, it's hard. You get what you can get, but the storms are still fabulous looking.
Mm-hmm. They are.
Oh,
This is another 80 mile an hour shot, and you can see in the foreground is the farmers watering their fields with those rolling sprinklers, and then a beautiful sunset.
Well, hey, Emily, since we're learning here, you must have pretty fast shutter speed on that.
Oh yeah. You don't go below 1,000, and then you also don't focus close to the car. Forget it. You got it. And a secret I finally learned on this trip is don't use autofocus. You set your focus to somewhere between infinity and 100 yards,
Yeah.
and just go with it, because you're not going to, autofocus is not going to get it. You just hope that what you're looking at is at the right setting that you have.
Emily, I would mention that is a Valley sprinkler system from Valley, Nebraska. And when I was a college, I worked at that plant drilling buckets of little holes in pieces of steel.
Oh,
Yeah,
geez.
and
They're all
what,
over the world though now.
yeah, but what's sad is you see all these thunderstorms and the water comes about halfway to the earth and then just
Mhm.
disappears, and
Yeah.
they're so
Yeah.
thirsty, but the water isn't coming all the way down a lot of times.
Was this in Washington on this last trip?
This was between Seattle and here.
Okay.
So I won't tell your insurance company, but you weren't taking these while you were driving, were you?
No, no, because my
Listen.
husband won't stop. If it was me, I would have stopped. He only stops when we have to charge. So anyway, this one, I thought it showed the heat. Do you see the heat waves
Yeah,
coming
yeah.
off?
Yeah.
To me, that was like, this is hot. This is a picture of what hot looks like. Because you didn't notice it till you zoomed in, and then everything was just shimmering with the heat.
Yeah.
Where was that, Kimberly? Is that in?
This
Oregon?
was between here and Seattle somewhere.
Amarillo or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
or-
no, because I tell you what, in
Where they're going.
Idaho has tons of these
Yeah, yeah.
fields and fields and fields of these
Wind turbines?
wind turbines, yeah. And so I just took it, but I thought, well, that's kind of cool, the little shimmery
Yeah.
look from-
When we came back from Minnesota, we went through Iowa, and I could not believe the number of wind turbines everywhere
Oh,
along
yeah.
the highway.
Yeah, yeah.
They're just everywhere. And then what is this flower?
This is a very invasive, nasty flower called the water hyacinth.
Oh.
And it chokes out, some years ago, it completely choked out half of the area of Lake Houston. And so now when they start getting bad, they spray them.
Yeah.
And but this was down there at Lakeview Park, right on the
A pretty flower.
edge of the water. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful flower. But
Yeah,
my God, they have roots like this. And you try and paddle into a large area of these things. And when you lift your paddle, you're throwing this gigantic plant, this way and that way. And you get about halfway in and you can't go any farther. You just stop because the roots are so massive.
and they float. So they just break off and then they float everywhere.
Yeah, and then they
Propagate.
reproduce. So they're
Yeah.
because they really are pretty.
Mark.
Yes, this is a summer picture. First time I ever saw the Matterhorn. And this is from the city of Zermatt, where they don't have any motorized other than electric vehicles.
Huh.
So it was quite interesting. But this is a sunset from the porch of one of the government buildings.
Huh. Beautiful.
Now you can tell we were on the Glacier Express during part of the trip in Switzerland. And this was a picture out of the back with my iPhone. Not my iPhone. What is that? A Pixel 2.
Okay.
Cool.
And this was a clock on the old Burns City Gate.
Is this an astronomical clock?
Yep.
Yeah, with a gloss.
That's what they have in Prague, is the astronomical clock, and that's what it looked like.
Mhm.
Yep, yeah, that's cool.
And when you think they were made in like the 1200s or 1400s.
Oh yeah, long.
Yeah. Well, this is summertime in Engelberg, Switzerland, and they filled the sky and they came down from the mountains all day long. It was just a beautiful picture of summertime when it's hot in Switzerland.
Relatively speaking.
Well, this little gal is upstaging the guide that we had that was talking about the city building there in Bern, which we were kind of looking at, but she was over there dancing on the little fountains that came up out of the concrete. And she was going from one to the other, and she was just having a great time. and it was hot.
Mm. She's trying
Some
to,
great curly hair.
Yeah, she was
Yeah.
so cute.
she is cute.
Very nice.
And this is summertime when you're hiking near the Matterhorn and you see the reflection in the pool there,
Wow.
the lake. You're just out there in the wilderness, just hiking along, and it was just beautiful. Summertime, hot.
And there was still some snow up there, so it had to be cool somewhere.
Mhm.
Yeah, but a lot of the glaciers are melting and they're finding some very interesting things in them.
Mhm.
Really?
Everything from airplanes to bodies.
Yep.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Wow.
not
Yeah.
good. Randy.
So my summer was driving to California for 2 months. $1,300 worth of gas later,
Oh,
Wow.
but it was worth it. The majority of my family and friends, of course, are there. So this was just 4th of July, and we had good old street fireworks. It was fun. So that's with the iPhone.
Wow.
hey.
And then
Cool.
I went to Laguna Beach. My grandson, where I was staying, his dad and mom thought he had COVID, and I thought, oh my gosh, I got to get out of the house. So, so I took off and I spent a day down in Laguna Beach, and I just was playing with my pano. Really, I mean, I had a bunch of other shots, but I thought the pano was kind of fun because this is the main beach. Like when you are on PCH, and there's another highway that intersects with it. That is it. You are downtown on that beach, and it was just a beautiful day.
Looks gorgeous.
It was really pretty. So I've been missing out on sports. My grandkids that are there, who are 13 and 10, they play soccer, they play baseball. So this is my grandson stealing second, but you're out.
That's a great shot.
Is he
Oh,
number
thank you.
15, Randy?
He's number 15, and you know, I had to shoot through a fence, and so it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun playing with it. I used ISO 100. Oh no, I let the ISO float on this. I'm not real good about this yet because I'm not sure I like the pictures when it gets really way up there. I mean, this was like 12,000. And I had the shutter speed at 1,000, and it was 6.3 f-stop, but I thought it came out pretty good. And I ended up taking a lot of pictures and gave them to all the parents, you know, because the kids were just really doing a great job. But got my fill in 2 months of sports.
Did you? Then you
That
had
being one of them. Yeah. So, and my granddaughter is a soccer player, and she's on a club soccer team. So every weekend is soccer. And I have to hand it. I mean, I did this as a parent of a soccer player, her dad, and his wife is a soccer player. So naturally we get a soccer player out of it. And, those kids are playing in that. It was 100 degrees, and it's just like, oh man. But it was a lot of fun. She's
keep
10,
hydrated.
so- yeah, exactly. They actually were stopping the game in 15-minute intervals
Yep.
to let the
that's
kids
good.
hydrate. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So-
excellent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Ron.
Well, this is to prove that even a blind pig can get a good picture sometimes.
When did you take this?
I think it was some night with a lot of beer. And I will really embarrass myself in that was handheld. I'm laying on the cement behind our house is one of the parks, with the big walkways over here behind what is it, the Target store and Lowe's and everything. There's a 2.5 or 3 mile hike that we can take on the sidewalks. So I laid on the sidewalk. I have my 18 to 400 maxed out all the way, and I'm holding it in place with my knees so that I'm not wiggling and squeezing the shutter. And the goal was really to try to get the craters in the right-hand side. And I was just
You get,
surprised that I got it. And you know, Kathy, because I ask you all the time, how do you do that? So I guess it's 4 beers and lay on my back.
Okay. If it works, it works.
That's
Yep.
just sharing and
Nailed it.
learning.
Unique methodology.
Yeah.
Was there any specific beer you were drinking? Would that help?
Huh.
Light, right?
It was probably Shiner.
Oh, that explains the blur.
Yeah, that explains the 4 because they're cheap enough. I can drink 4 of them. Because you guys, when we traveled together, you guys know I was the cheap guy on the group. I had a beer.
Yeah, I know. 4 is a lot.
Yeah. I like clouds. And I just this one kind of like just caught me and I just
They're
Yeah.
also nice for adding in the
Beautiful.
background of your photographs too, if you don't.
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
That
Okay.
is, and then this is cool. You've got this.
That's the backyard. And
Is that your backyard?
yeah, that's looking across to my neighbors. And so I get a lot of sunset, really sharp sunsets out of that.
Yeah.
I have too many
Cool.
trees for sunsets in my yard.
Well,
And
I
is
know
this
that's
South
not the back
Dakota?
of Kingwood because they would have cut all those trees down by now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is our trip out. I think that's
South
the
Dakota?
Badlands, Kathy. That's when I'm standing with you and
Yeah.
we're taking those shots.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking through those because they remind me of the trip and again the clouds, and I think this is one I hadn't shared before. So
Yeah. No, that was a really great trip. That is a gorgeous
It
sunset.
was awesome.
so
And then Mike.
This is a summertime picture for a few years back, but this is from the village of Ez in southern France, and it's just a beautiful little town that's set up kind of in the mountains, and you actually stay in rooms throughout the town, and you go down the streets, and this is the entrance to a Michelin 5-star restaurant that we ate at the time. And I was told by the French waiter that I pronounced oui perfectly if he thought I was French. I said no.
wow.
A wonderful meal. I keep pursuing my photography, and this is a picture of the constellation Andromeda, and that is a summer constellation. And I took this in Wimberley, Texas. My son's just bought a place there a couple of years ago, and I'm finding out it's just a beautiful spot to get all kinds of pictures of this.
This is a great shot, Mike. How long is the exposure?
I took 22-minute exposures on there, and then I stack them. And I use I'm really getting into this new software called PixInsight, which is mainly for astrophotography, but you actually can do all kinds of really neat stuff with it. So I keep learning about it on there. And I actually got 4 different constellations there over 4 or 5 days at my son's house there.
Fantastic.
Beautiful, Mike.
So no beer involved?
No beer involved. Well, I should.
Well, he's a photographer. Come on, everybody, give him a break.
There's got to be some.
But there might have been wine, Jim.
Oh, okay, that's good.
And this is
Whoa.
speaking of Luminar. It's amazing what that software could do, because this is fireworks thinking of summer, and actually it was taken at Disney in Epcot, and they've got a whole new set of pictures now at Epcot for the fireworks that it's just amazing. And this we took, and like I said, the Luminar, the before and after was just amazing using Luminar.
Yeah.
So was this handheld or on a
I had it on a tripod.
Okay.
Is it the Japanese pavilion
Yes.
backs up, and there's a restaurant on the second floor. And that's where we set up now, because you got a better view. You can see the people who are down here on the water, but you've got whatever this is called as an artwork, and then the sky. So this is my new go-to place for fireworks at Epcot.
And the only way to do it is you just set it up and you just take time pictures every
Yeah.
yeah, every 30 seconds or
Oh,
so.
that's a beautiful shot.
This is our granddaughter, Beauty at the Beach. This was 2 years ago. And again, I used, like Mike, I'm using Luminar, which actually there's a preset. So it changes this. You go into the edits and you can work on the face and start with the eyes and the smile. And it's an amazing piece of software for post-processing. But this is Destin Beach. We've been going there for years. This year we didn't, so we need to go back there next year, but the sunsets can be phenomenal. And then this is a girl in a white dress. This is our other granddaughter. And she was just looking out. We were doing formal pictures and she took a break and I happened to catch her. Her mom put a little flower in her hair, but I just thought this was sweet. She's just looking at the sunset.
Great.
And then one of the favorite things to do on the beach is go crabbing at night. And so I thought this was cool because you have all the light and then all the shadows radiating from this group. And the story is the youngest grandson had the pail filled with crabs and he was jumping it up and the crabs got all over him and he went screaming. I didn't get that, but I couldn't figure out what the commotion was, but he upended basically all of the crabs that they caught. That they let him go anyway, but he had crabs crawling on him and he was just like really, really upset. So it's fun. This is a real fun thing to do. So we're at the end of the meeting. The next meeting is September 20th. And as Pam said earlier, it's a think tank products overview by Ted Meister, marketing director, and Matt Fabino, content director with the think tank photo. And what I didn't have here, and she said, is that they will be giving things away. Share and Learn next month for September is Fill the Frame. And actually, this is a flower shot from John Gray that I swiped from Facebook. And this is from the Watson Rare Native Plant Preserve, and it's a Chapman orchard.
Very nice.
Okay.
Wow.
So, and then October is going to be vacations. I know that some of us have taken a few, even if you have to do your frames. It is, as photographers, you learn by doing. And so I think you do have to get your cameras out periodically to really keep your skill sets sharp and try new things. So I'm hoping that a few people will try and get some current shots for Fill the Frame and for the vacations. But if you don't have the opportunities, then feel free to come up with something that's in your catalogs.
If it ever comes off enough.
Yeah, are there any questions from the presentation today?
No, very good.
That was great.
Okay.
Good meeting.
I thought
Very good.
it was excellent. And Chuck has taken a recording of it so we can all review what he said. So I'd like to thank everyone who joined us tonight. It's always nice to see everyone, even though it's virtually. Next month, it's on the agenda that we're going back to the in-person and Zoom at the church.
Okay.
So look for that, because unless something happens where it doesn't work, I think that's what we're going to try and go back to, so that we can all again meet in that one smaller room and then also do the Zoom. We have a few technicalities to work out. So, and I want to thank everyone who actually posts on Facebook. I think it helps us know what we're doing. And we hope that you're staying healthy and enjoying life with your eyes wide open. And I hope that you will enjoy the rest of your evening and see you next month in September. So
Thanks, everybody.
So thank you, everybody.
Kathy, thanks, Chuck.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chuck. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Good meeting.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh, and for anyone still available, come to lunch tomorrow. We have a lunch meetup at 12:30, don't we, on Wednesdays?
Yes, we do. It's virtual tomorrow.
Right, of course,
Right,
yeah.
I'll send out a link. In fact, I think just in case somebody comes. Get a
Okay.
new camera, Chris, by the way.
Hmm?
I'm planning on getting a new camera, but it's not the
Oh,
kind.
I'm getting a new camera too. My wife said it's okay. She's figured she watches the bank account. She
Oh,
said
really?
I can get a new camera
Well, what I'm doing, I'm
for
going cheap.
Christmas.
I'm getting
Bye.
I'm getting a new infrared conversion is what I'm doing.
There you go.
I have an old camera that I decide I'm not using.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
converting it to infrared, so I'm looking forward to that.